Disney's Peter Pan is a Disney classic, with the first movie popular enough to gain not only a sequel, but an entire series for Tinkerbell and the show Jake and the Neverland Pirates. But in the two original movies, who's the most good and who is the most evil? And where does Peter Pan rank when he takes an honest look at his actions? Hey guys, I'm Brad with WickedBinge, and this is Peter Pan and Return to Neverland, Good to Evil. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble character and working our way down. These characters are the good. Taking the gold medal of most good is Nana. Being the canine nursemaid, she takes pride in caring for the darling children. She picks up their toys, makes their beds, and makes sure they get their medicine. Nana was such a beloved member of the family that in Return to Neverland, the new dog is given the title of Nana 2 and carrying on the work Nana had begun. Seeing her get dragged outside by Mr. Darling because she gained sympathy broke the hearts of many children. It didn't feel any better when Nana tried to use her ears to fly after the children. Tied for the silver medal are Michael and Daniel. Michael had been the youngest child in the first movie, while Daniel is Wendy's son in Return to Neverland. Both are young and innocent, only wanting to play and hear Peter Pan's stories. Michael is a follower for most of the movie. He follows John and the Lost Boys through Neverland's wilderness, clueless to the danger he was in, save for when he had been the only one to notice when the boys were being surrounded. Daniel wound up being a lot like Michael. Even their designs resemble one another. However, Daniel was far more outspoken and assertive. Daniel's reliance on hearing Peter Pan stories stems from a need for comfort in a war-torn England. Whereas his older sister Jane doesn't understand the need for children's stories, it's both endearing and heartbreaking to see that Daniel used them as an escape from a harsh reality. Both were sweet kids that looked for fun in any situation. Our bronze medal goes to Wendy Darling. In the first movie, she helped Peter reattach his shadow and took on an almost motherly role to her brothers before arriving in Neverland. Wendy was patient with nearly everyone. She insisted that Peter forgive Tinkerbell for almost getting her killed. She rolled with it when ordered to get firewood rather than joining the festivities. Even when Peter had upset her, Wendy was level-headed when disagreeing with him. In the second film, Wendy became an actual mother to Jane and Daniel. She stayed optimistic and loving, despite the chaos of the war. We can only imagine how much stress Wendy had to be going through, knowing her children would be sent away where they would hopefully be safe. We dock her a few points for a couple of reasons. While we get that she was trying to be loyal to Peter, encouraging the Lost Boys and her brothers to do the same, she gave them a death sentence. Had Peter not shown up, a watery grave would have met Wendy and the boys. Next is the daughter of the chief, Tiger Lily. Though she didn't get much screen time compared to other characters, not even appearing in the sequel, there's no denying how loyal she was to Peter. When Hook and Smee kidnapped her, Tiger Lily refused to reveal Peter's hideout. We can't say for sure that many people, let alone children her age, would have had a fraction of the composure Tiger Lily showed. The only reason we can't rank her higher is because we don't see much of her past this interaction. Coming up on our list is John. Being the middle child of the Darling family, John wanted to take the chance to see Neverland to experience an adventure. He took the leading role with the Lost Boys when Peter was showing Wendy the island. John also took a lot of pride in being the intellectual of the group. While his need to be the one to lead the Lost Boys to victory in a lighthearted turf war with a native tribe got them captured, John was also quick to admit that he messed up. John was easily swept up in the excitement of the island, just like Michael had been. This meant that, unlike their older sister, John began to forget what their home had been like or who their parents were. That alone isn't evil, but it did make him act out against Wendy and indulge in the carefree life on Neverland. Taking our next spot is Mrs. Darling. As seen in the beginning and end of the first movie, she was far more understanding of the children and their games, calming her husband's panicked episodes. Wendy clearly got her level-headed nature from her mother. We can't rank her higher since she doesn't accomplish anything heroic or stand out, but we felt she deserved to be in the good section of our list for her reaction to Wendy discussing the shadow she saw. It's normal for any parent to do one of two things. One, to brush off the comment as a child having an overactive imagination, or two, take the comment seriously and be aware that something sinister might be afoot. Luckily, Mrs. Darling took the second approach and treated the talk of a shadow in her children's window with concern. With that said, we've arrived at the neutral territory. These characters fall in the gray area. Our first ranking for this section goes to the Lost Boys. We don't feel right about placing them lower since they are just kids, but they do a lot of damage. They're more fleshed out in the second movie when they interact with Jane. The boys were playful and always looking to make everything a game. They enjoyed toying with Hook and the pirates, hiding their treasure and taking turns hunting it down. They had an ongoing game with the native tribe, of the teams catching each other before letting them loose. Even with Jane's notebook, they were able to make a small improvised game of football. Also, the boys are easily swayed. They had little to no memory of their lives before Neverland, not remembering what a mother was. They went along with Peter's games, but also caved when Hook presented them with a chance to join his crew. They even believed Wendy was a bird, just because Tinkerbell had said so, despite seeing that Wendy was clearly a human, just like them. Since they were so easily persuaded, that left them unable to claim any heroic task or be truly loyal to anyone. Next on our list is Jane, Wendy's daughter. Jane is more no-nonsense than her mother. She faced the trials of living during a war head-on, taking notes on anything she picked up on the radio and getting her brother Daniel a practical gift for his birthday. She pushed aside the desire to cling to childish things, such as listening to her mother's stories about Neverland or playing Peter Pan with Daniel. She was in denial about leaving her home because she wanted to keep the promise she made to her father, Edward, about protecting the family. The stress of having to leave caused her to lash out at Daniel rather than protect him. After she's kidnapped by Hook, Jane is forced to come to terms with her situation and ask Peter for help. When Jane was unable to fly, she lashed out again, only this time she caused a lot of damage and nearly caused Tinkerbell's light to go out. Though Jane came through in the end and saved Peter and the Lost Boys, we had to drop her low for the simple fact that it was her actions that caused them to be caught by Hook in the first place. She may not have blown the whistle, but she had accepted a deal with Hook. Jane had reasoned that since the treasure belonged to Hook in the first place, that he was in the right. But we want to point out that Jane was raised on stories about this man. She knew how underhanded Hook could be and fell for it anyway. Though one could argue that she was a young girl who was desperate to get home, which we recognize. But she had a lot of chances to come clean, especially when Peter found her and tried to make amends. Next are the crocodile and octopus. These two had one motivation: eat Hook. And no, we don't mean that as some joke. They wanted to make a meal of the captain, literally. We don't know what it was that made Hook seem like a 5-star meal, but we can't call the crocodile or octopus evil just for finding dinner. The fact is, they were predators on the hunt. They didn't really care who wound up in their clutches, it was just that Hook was the meal they wanted more. Next is the boy who never grew up, Peter Pan. He takes a drastic change between the first movie and the second, which is why he isn't placed lower on this list. In the first film, Peter was far more clueless and inconsiderate. He ordered Wendy around, shoving his shadow at her and telling her to get on with it before dragging her to Neverland. He wanted Wendy around just to tell stories about him and feed his ego, which he also shared with the mermaids. He tormented Hook even when nothing was really happening. He cut off Hook's hand and fed it to a crocodile, for some reason. Peter also didn't take anything seriously. He brushed off the mermaids attempting to drown Wendy, claiming that they were only having fun. He didn't seem concerned over Tinkerbell's jealousy and didn't really do much of anything when she nearly got Wendy killed. Luckily, Peter grew up in his own way. By the time the second movie is released, Peter is far more aware of his surroundings. He recognized that Jane was not Wendy with the way she punched him. He was able to admit to his mistakes and apologize to Jane for upsetting her, offering to teach her to fly so that she could return home. He worked to get Jane to accept being a part of their group and have fun for once, not only to help Jane, but to keep Tinkerbell's light from going out. Like our ranking of the Lost Boys, we grant him some leniency since he is just a kid. But a kid or not, we still can't think of a good reason for him to torment Hook and cut off his hand, at least as far as the movies go. And Peter got way too much enjoyment out of the idea of kicking Hook to death for our liking.
A codfish on a hook.
Next is Mr. Darling. Much like Hook, he was far too stressed out in comparison to everyone else. He would overthink every little detail, from cufflinks he picks for a party to worrying that his children are using their imagination too much. But we also see he was a good man at heart. Mr. Darling did admit to being too harsh on Wendy, so he allowed her to stay in the nursery a while longer by the end of the movie. Though he claimed to hate it when the children doted on Nana, Mr. Darling also talked to her and vented as if she was a person he could confide in. He didn't take the concern of a shadow in his children's window seriously, but after a whole evening of hearing his kids go on about Peter Pan, we can't really blame him too much. The next spot goes to the native tribe. Horrible representation aside, we had to include them for their role in the first movie. We're referring mainly to the chief, who was also the father to Tiger Lily. We can't place them higher due to the fact that they nearly killed not only the Lost Boys, but also John and Michael. However, we don't think this earned them a ranking in our evil section, since the motivation for this made sense: the unknown whereabouts of their princess. But we do wonder why exactly they believe the Lost Boys were responsible, with the pirates looming about. For the last spot in the neutral ranking, we have the pixie, Tinkerbell. We're sorry to say that we can't take the Tinkerbell movies into account for this ranking, so she falls from grace on this list. We already mentioned earlier that Tinkerbell attempted to get Wendy killed because she was jealous of her. She was also easily tricked by Hook when she bought into the fake sympathy he offered and gave away the Lost Boys hideout so Hook could get rid of Wendy. Tinkerbell wasn't too fond of Jane, but at least she didn't try to kill her. In fact, Tinkerbell was more fond of Jane, helping her fly and save the boys. And we have to give credit to Tinkerbell for nearly being blown up, saving Peter. Even when the hideout was caving in, Tinkerbell risked being crushed and insisted that Peter go to save Wendy and the boys. Finally, we've reached the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Runner-ups worth the mention are the mermaids. As we brought up before, the mermaids aren't as nice as they appear. They're kind to Peter, always wanting to hear his stories of fighting against the pirates. But when it came to Wendy, they had no issue insulting her right away. Then we have the main act that brings them to this low spot on our list: their attempt to drown Wendy. It doesn't help that when asked, they replied very casually what their intentions were, which makes you wonder what they meant to do once they caught Jane from Peter. Sure, it looked like they were just going to get her feet wet by dunking water on her, but we aren't confident it would have stopped there. Our bronze medal of evil goes to the pirates. Being the men that work for Hook, they have come to hate life on Neverland. They gripe that they wanted to sail the seas again so they can continue robbing and terrifying people. One even placed a noose around Smee's neck, while another threatened to slit his throat. While they are scared of Hook, they clearly have no regard for Smee, the inhabitants of Neverland, or each other. The only thing that the pirates really care about is the treasure once it was found in the second movie. They dove overboard to get the jewels, even though that's kind of like a death sentence, with the crocodiles, octopuses, and other creatures that lurk below. Our silver medal of evil goes to Smee. Smee may have insisted that he was loyal to Hook, but that loyalty only went so far. Smee wasn't the smartest guy, but that alone doesn't make him a bad guy. Smee was just as afraid of the captain as everyone else. But he also made various attempts to get Hook to drop his rivalry with Peter and leave Neverland. He carried out various tasks for and along with Hook, including kidnapping Tiger Lily, capturing Tinkerbell, and of course, hunting children. When Hook was lowering the bomb into Hangman's tree, Smee's response wasn't to talk Hook out of killing Peter. Instead, he suggested a more humane method, like slitting the boy's throat. If you're okay with that sort of thing, you must be evil. When Hook was on the losing end in the first movie, Smee didn't stick around to see how things played out. His plan was to grab as much treasure and supplies as he could stock in a lifeboat before trying to sneak away quietly. But we want to point out how fearless Smee was when dealing with the crocodile and the octopus, shooing them off. He even tried to smash an oar over the croc's head in an attempt to save his captain. So at least there's that going for his character.
At least the crocodile had manners.
Finally, our gold medal of evil goes to Captain Hook. There's no questioning how he made it to the top ranking. Hook was obsessed with getting revenge on Peter, and it drove him to do some extreme things. He kidnapped Tiger Lily and threatened to let her drown in the high tide. He kidnapped the Lost Boys and gave them the ultimatum to either join his crew or walk the plank. He attempted to kill Peter with a bomb, a massive overkill that likely damaged the other people and creatures on the island. He used guilt and manipulation to get others to see his ways, such as when he tricked Tinkerbell and Jane. Hook was not only feared by the Lost Boys and mermaids, but also by his own crew, who were more than happy to send Smee with their complaints rather than face the captain themselves. While Hook had slightly different motivations when it came to the original books, we have to place him as the most evil in these movies. But we will concede that even in this portrayal, it's tough to not feel a little bad for Hook. Even when he's portrayed as the most irredeemable character in the movies, Captain Hook can still be easily seen as a man on the edge, always tormented by children that like to sever his limbs. Of course he's angry all the time. He had various things stolen, he was harassed, and now he felt like killing Peter was the only way to regain his dignity. In the second movie, Hook was thinking about leaving Neverland, until Smee unintentionally reminded Hook of the humiliation he suffered. That doesn't justify his actions, but it helps to see why he stuck around and held on to his rivalry. Alright, that's the list. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.